The massive alien ships appeared at the edge of the solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. There were 12 of them, each one bigger than Earth's largest space station. Their hulls were black metal that seemed to drink in light, and strange symbols glowed along their sides in colors that hurt human eyes to look at. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Station, watching the readings on his screens with growing dread. Each alien ship was at least 10 kilometers long. His entire fleet of human warships could fit inside just one of them. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Sarah Chen, her voice shaking slightly. "It's coming from the lead ship." "Put it on screen," Webb ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing a creature that made several crew members step backward. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. Its eyes were solid black, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Primitive species of the third planet," the alien said, its words somehow translated into perfect English. "I am High Commander Vex of the Hegemony Council. Your species has been evaluated and found adequate for incorporation into our empire." Webb felt his heart pounding, but he kept his face calm. "This is Admiral Webb of the United Earth Defense Force. What do you want?" The alien's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Want? We do not want. Admiral, we take. For 3,000 of your years, the hegemony has brought order to this galaxy. We have united over 200 species under our rule." Other aliens appeared on the screen behind Vex. Webb could see creatures with tentacles. Instead of arms, beings made of what looked like living crystal, and things that defied easy description. All of them stared at the humans with the same cold confidence. "Your species shows promise," Vex continued. "You have achieved basic space travel. You have developed nuclear weapons. You even have some crude understanding of faster-than-light communication, but you are children playing with dangerous toys." "Get to the point," Webb said, though he already knew he wouldn't like what came next. "The point, Admiral, is simple. Your species will surrender to the hegemony within 72 of your hours. You will hand over all military assets. Your leaders will submit to our authority. Your population will be restructured to better serve the Empire." Webb's blood ran cold. "And if we refuse?" Vex's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Look at your sensors, Admiral. Count our ships. Calculate our firepower. Then ask yourself if refusal is even possible." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Chen, "our long-range sensors are picking up more ships. Hundreds of them, all heading this way." Webb closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his face was hard as steel. "Get me President Martinez, emergency channel, and send a coded message to Section Black." "Section Black, sir?" Chen looked confused. "I don't have any records of—" "You're not supposed to," Webb cut her off. "Just send the message. Authorization code. Sleeping Giant." As his communications officer sent the coded message into space, Webb stared out at the alien fleet. The creatures thought they were dealing with primitive humans who would roll over at the first sign of superior force. They had studied human history and seen how often humans fought each other. They probably thought Earth would surrender rather than face extinction. They were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. Humans were very, very good at keeping secrets. 3 hours later, President Elena Martinez stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by her top advisors. The room was deep underground, protected by layers of concrete and steel, but everyone knew it wouldn't matter if those alien ships decided to attack. "Options?" Martinez asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. General Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, shook his head. "Conventional forces? We'd last maybe an hour. Their smallest ship outguns our entire space fleet." "What about the nuclear option?" asked Secretary of Defense Williams. "They're expecting that," replied Dr. Sarah Kim, the president's science advisor. "Their shields can probably handle anything we throw at them. And even if we damaged a few ships, they have hundreds more coming." Martinez looked around the room at the grim faces. "So we surrender?" "Ma'am," General Harrison said quietly, "there might be another option, but I need to brief you on some classified programs. Programs that don't officially exist." Martinez raised an eyebrow. How classified? Black budget. Above presidential clearance until now. The kind of programs that Congress doesn't know about, and the public definitely can't know about. Show me. Harrison activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the table. Sleek ships unlike anything in the official Earth fleet, weapons that seemed to bend space itself, and technological designs that looked decades ahead of anything humanity was supposed to possess. Project Prometheus, Harrison explained. Started 50 years ago after the Roswell incident. Turns out that wasn't our first contact with aliens. It was just the first one the public heard about. Martinez stared at the images. We've been preparing for this? Some of us have been. Harrison nodded. Every crashed alien ship, every first contact that got covered up, every piece of alien technology we could reverse engineer. We've been building our own version of their tech for decades. And you never told any president about this? Previous presidents were told what they needed to know when they needed to know it. Today, ma'am, you need to know everything. Dr. Kim leaned forward. How many ships do we really have? The Black Fleet numbers about 300 vessels. They're hidden throughout the asteroid belt, powered down, waiting. The alien sensors can't detect them because we're using their own cloaking technology against them. Martinez felt a spark of hope for the first time since the aliens arrived. Can we win? Harrison's smile was cold and dangerous. Ma'am, these aliens think they're dealing with primitive humans who just learned to reach space. They don't know. We've been studying their technology for half a century. They don't know we've been preparing for exactly this scenario. What do you need from me? Permission to activate the Black Fleet. And ma'am, you're going to need to give a very convincing surrender speech. The aliens need to think we're beaten before we show them what humanity is really capable of. Martinez looked out at her advisors, seeing a mixture of fear and grim determination on their faces. Humanity was about to gamble everything on a secret that had been kept for 50 years. Draft the surrender speech, she ordered. Make it sound desperate and defeated. Let these aliens think they've won. And the Black Fleet? Martinez's eyes were hard as diamonds. Tell Admiral Volkov that Earth is counting on her. It's time to show these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity's home. Outside, the alien ships moved closer to Earth. Their commanders confident that another primitive species was about to join their empire. They had no idea that deep in the asteroid belt, 300 human warships were slowly powering up their engines and charging their weapons. The trap was about to be set. President Elena Martinez stood behind the podium in the Oval Office, her face the perfect picture of defeat. The cameras rolled as she delivered what would become known as the most convincing lie in human history. My fellow citizens of Earth, she began, her voice cracking just enough to sound genuinely broken. After careful consideration and consultation with world leaders, I must inform you that Earth formally surrenders to the Hegemony Council. High Commander Vex watched the transmission from his flagship, his 4 arms crossed in satisfaction. The human leader looked exactly as he expected, broken, desperate, and completely outmatched. We cannot match their technological superiority, Martinez continued, a single tear rolling down her cheek. To resist would mean the extinction of our entire species. I will not be responsible for the death of 8 billion people. On screens across Earth, people watched their president surrender. Many cried. Some screamed in rage. But in certain secret facilities around the world, men and women in black uniforms smiled grimly. They knew what the aliens didn't. President Martinez was buying them time. We ask only for a brief period to organize the transition of power, Martinez said, her voice growing smaller. 72 hours to prepare our people for the changes ahead. Please show mercy to those who cannot understand what's happening, Vex turned to his tactical officer, a creature that looked like a giant insect with too many eyes. Analysis of their surrender, Commander Thrix? Complete capitulation, High Commander. Thrix clicked in response. Their military forces are powering down weapons systems. Their orbital platforms are broadcasting surrender signals. Even their lunar colonies have raised white flags. Excellent. Move the fleet to occupation positions. Begin scanning for their most important military installations. We'll want to secure those first. What Vex couldn't see were the small details that would have worried him if he'd been more careful. Earth's surrendering military forces were powering down their weapons, yes, but they were also quietly moving supplies to hidden locations. The orbital platforms were broadcasting surrender signals, but they were also uploading massive amounts of data to locations the aliens couldn't detect. And those white flags on the lunar colonies? They were covering the real installations that had been built deep underground over the past 50 years. Far out in the asteroid belt, Admiral Sarah Volkov stood on the bridge of the EDS Nemesis, humanity's most advanced warship. Around her, the Black Fleet waited in perfect silence. 300 ships, each one built with technology that officially didn't exist, each one crewed by people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, Commander Jackson, "the alien fleet is moving into occupation formation. They're taking the bait." Volkov nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. She was 53 years old, had been born in a secret military facility, and had never existed in any official record. Like everyone else in the Black Fleet, she was a ghost, a person who lived only to protect Earth from threats like this. "Distance to target?" she asked quietly. 18 million kilometers and closing. They'll be in optimal firing range in 6 hours. "And our cloaking status?" "All ships running dark and silent. Their sensors are passing right over us, Admiral. As far as they know, this part of space is empty." Volkov allowed herself a small smile. The aliens were used to dealing with species that fought conventionally. They expected desperate last stands, heroic charges, and ultimately futile resistance. They didn't expect humans to lie so well, or to plan so carefully, or to wait so patiently for the perfect moment to strike. On the bridge of Vex's flagship, the alien commander was reviewing the strategic reports. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The human military was standing down. Their space stations were opening their docks for inspection. Even their internet was full of messages of surrender and pleas for mercy. "How long until the rest of the fleet arrives?" Vex asked. "The main battle group will be here in 18 hours, High Commander. Another 400 ships plus the support vessels." Vex's stone-like features showed satisfaction. "Good. Once we have our full force in position, we can begin the restructuring process. This species shows promise. With proper guidance, they could become useful servants." Commander Thrix's many eyes focused on the tactical display. "High Commander, should we be concerned about the outer asteroid belt? Our long-range scans show some unusual mineral readings." Vex barely glanced at the display. "Asteroid mining operations, nothing more. These humans are barely capable of interplanetary travel. They certainly don't have the technology to hide a fleet from our sensors." If Thrix had been human, he might have felt a chill at those words. But he was an alien who had conquered dozens of species, and like his commander, he had never encountered prey that could deceive them so completely. Meanwhile, in the secret command bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, General Harrison coordinated with resistance cells across the globe. The surrender was holding perfectly. Every human military unit was playing their part, looking defeated and broken, while quietly preparing for the signal that would change everything. "Sir," reported a communications officer, "we're receiving coded updates from the Black Fleet. All ships are in position and ready. And the civilian population? The evacuation of major cities is proceeding under cover of refugee relocation. Most people think they're being moved to safer areas before the aliens land. They don't know they're being moved away from potential battle zones." Harrison nodded, grimly. The hardest part of the plan wasn't fighting the aliens. It was keeping the deception so perfect that even most of humanity believed they had really surrendered. Only a few thousand people on the entire planet knew the truth. Time until the aliens reach optimal attack position? 5 hours, sir. Send the final confirmation to Admiral Volkov. Tell her Earth is counting on her. Back in the asteroid belt, Volkov received the message and felt the weight of 8 billion lives on her shoulders. Around her, the bridge crew worked in perfect silence, checking and rechecking their systems. Every person on every ship in the Black Fleet knew that if they failed, humanity would face extinction or slavery. "Admiral," Commander Jackson reported, "all ships confirm ready status. Weapons charged, targeting solutions locked, boarding teams. Standing by? And the special packages? Loaded and ready, ma'am. If these aliens want to see what humanity is capable of, they're about to get a demonstration they'll never forget." Volkov looked out at the darkness of space, where 300 human warships waited like sharks in the deep water. The aliens thought they were the predators in this scenario. They were about to learn that sometimes the prey has teeth. "Begin final approach," she ordered. "Silent running. No active sensors. We go in quiet until we're ready to make some noise." The Black Fleet began to move, 300 ships sliding through space like shadows, approaching an alien armada that had no idea what was coming for them. On Earth, President Martinez finished her second surrender broadcast, this one even more convincing than the first. She spoke of humanity's hope for peaceful coexistence, of learning from their alien masters, of accepting their place in the galactic order. Vex watched the broadcast and felt completely satisfied. Another species had been brought into the fold. Another victory for the hegemony. By tomorrow, Earth would be just another conquered world, and its people would begin their new lives as servants of the Empire. He had no way of knowing that in 6 hours, his entire understanding of warfare was about to change forever. The attack began exactly as Admiral Volkov had planned it, with complete surprise and overwhelming violence. At 347 Earth Standard Time, 300 human warships materialized from the darkness of space, like ghosts becoming solid. One moment, the alien sensors showed empty space around their fleet. The next moment, they were surrounded by ships that should not have existed. High Commander Vex was drinking something that tasted like liquid metal when the alarm started screaming on his bridge. Commander Thrix's many eyes all focused on different displays at once, his insect-like body trembling with shock. "High Commander!" Thrix's voice was higher than usual, filled with something aliens rarely felt. Fear. "We have contacts, multiple contacts. They're everywhere." "What are you talking about?" Vex demanded, spilling his drink as he lurched toward the tactical display. "There's nothing out there but empty space and—" The words died in his throat as he saw the display. Hundreds of red dots surrounded his fleet, each one representing a human ship that had appeared from nowhere. But these weren't the crude vessels they had seen in Earth's official fleet. These ships were sleek, dark, and covered in weapons that made Vex's stone-like skin go cold. "How is this possible?" he whispered. On the bridge of the EDS Nemesis, Admiral Volkov watched the alien fleet scramble to respond to their sudden appearance. She had trained for this moment for 30 years, studying every piece of alien technology humanity had recovered, learning every weakness in their tactics. "All ships, this is Nemesis Actual," she broadcast on the Black Fleet command frequency. "Weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The first salvo from the Black Fleet wasn't made of conventional weapons. Instead, they fired something the aliens had never encountered: reality warpers. The devices punched holes in space-time itself, turning the aliens' nearly impenetrable shields into thermal conductors that cooked the ships from the inside. Vex watched in horror as 6 of his capital ships simply stopped working. Their shields didn't fail dramatically. They just became useless. And then the ships themselves began to glow cherry red as their own energy systems turned against them. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships, return fire!" The alien fleet's response was immediate and massive. Beams of pure energy lanced out toward the human ships, each one carrying enough power to crack a planet's surface. But the human ships moved like nothing the aliens had ever seen. They didn't just dodge the attacks. They seemed to know where the attacks would be before they were fired. Commander Jackson, monitoring the battle from the Nemesis, couldn't help but grin as he watched the tactical display. "They're targeting. Computers are 50 years out of date, Admiral. We've been studying their attack patterns since the first crash at Roswell. They might as well be telegraphing their moves." But Volkov wasn't interested in just winning. She wanted to send a message. "Activate the Reaper protocol," she ordered. "Ma'am?" Jackson's face went pale. "The Reaper ships? Are you sure?" "They wanted to restructure our species, Commander. I think it's time they learned what that really means." Across the Black Fleet, 30 ships changed their attack pattern. Instead of destroying the alien vessels, they latched onto them with devices that looked like mechanical spiders. Within minutes, the alien ships stopped firing at humans and began firing at their own allies. On Vex's bridge, Commander Thrix's voice was barely a whisper. "High Commander, the Valiant and the Crusher have turned on us. They're firing on our own ships." "That's impossible," Vex snarled. "Their crews would never—" A new voice cut across the communication channels, speaking. In perfect hegemony standard, the language of the alien empire. But the voice was unmistakably human. "Hi, Commander Vex." Admiral Volkov's voice was calm and professional. "This is Admiral Sarah Volkov of the Terran Defense Force. I believe you have something that belongs to us." "What?" Vex was so shocked he forgot to be angry. "What could we possibly have of yours?" "Our surrender. We'd like it back." On the tactical display, more alien ships winked out of existence or turned to fire on their former allies. The human ships moved through the alien formation like wolves through a flock of sheep, picking their targets with deadly precision. "You see, Commander Vex," Volkov continued, her voice broadcast across all frequencies, so every alien crew could hear. "We've been studying your species for a very long time. We know how you fight. We know how you think. And we know your greatest weakness." "We have no weaknesses," Vex roared into his communication system. "The hegemony is the supreme force in this galaxy." "Your weakness," Volkov said calmly, "is that you've never faced anyone like us. You fight civilized wars against civilized enemies. You follow rules. You show mercy. You try to minimize casualties." As she spoke, a human ship literally carved through one of the alien dreadnoughts, using some kind of focused gravity beam that turned the massive vessel into a pretzel-shaped wreck. "We don't fight civilized wars, Commander Vex. We fight human wars. And the first rule of human warfare is simple. If you threaten our home, we will end you." 3 more alien ships disappeared from the tactical display, their crews somehow turned against their own fleet. But the most terrifying part wasn't the weapons or the tactics. It was the sound coming from the human ships. Music. Loud, aggressive human music mixed with the sounds of laughter and whooping cheers as the human crews enjoyed their work. Commander Thrix's insect-like body was shaking now. "Hi, Commander! Recommend immediate retreat. We've lost over half our fleet and they're enjoying this." But Vex was staring at something else on his tactical display. The human ships weren't just destroying his fleet. They were collecting pieces of it. Broken chunks of alien technology were being hauled into the human vessels by tractor beams. "What are they doing with our ship parts?" he asked. His question was answered when several human ships suddenly sprouted new weapons that looked exactly like hegemony plasma cannons. But these weapons fired with a different frequency, one that punched through hegemony shields like paper. "They're adapting our technology," Thrix whispered. "In real time, during the battle." "That's impossible. It would take years to understand our technology well enough to—" "Hi, Commander!" came a panicked voice from the engine room. "Something is wrong with our computers. They're showing human ship designs in our database, and our weapons are targeting friendly vessels." Vex felt something he hadn't experienced in 300 years of conquest. Pure terror. On the Nemesis, Commander Jackson was monitoring the AI virus they had uploaded to the alien network. "Admiral, their entire fleet is compromised. Their own computers are working for us now." "How many ships left?" "Maybe 30% of their original force, and most of those are dead in space. Should we accept their surrender?" Volkov considered this for a moment. The alien fleet was broken, its survivors fleeing toward the edge of the solar system or drifting powerlessly in space. The battle was over, and humanity had won more completely than she had ever dared hope. "Open a channel to the remaining alien ships," she ordered. "This is Admiral Volkov to all surviving hegemony vessels. You came here expecting primitive humans to kneel before your superior technology and firepower. Instead, you've learned that humans don't kneel. We adapt, we overcome, and we never, ever forget." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You're going to return to your masters now. You're going to tell them exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that Earth is not defenseless and that humanity is not primitive. And you're going to make sure they understand one very important fact." "What fact?" Vex's voice was barely a whisper. "The fact that this was just our defensive fleet. If you want to see what happens when humans go on the offense, please, feel free to come back. With more ships." The surviving alien vessels began their retreat, limping away from Earth at maximum speed. Behind them, they left the wreckage of over 200 ships and the shattered remains of their reputation as the galaxy's supreme military force. On Earth, people watched the news broadcasts in stunned silence as the truth was finally revealed. Their surrender had been fake, their military had been prepared, and their species had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The age of human conquest was about to begin. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, High Commander Vex sat in chains aboard a human ship, watching his former empire crumble on a dozen different screens. The humans hadn't been satisfied with just defending their home. They had done something no species in galactic history had ever attempted. They had followed the fleeing aliens home. "Comfortable, Commander?" asked Captain Torres, the human officer assigned to guard him. She was eating something from a small packet while monitoring the tactical displays. "Your old friends are putting up quite a fight on Kepler 438b. Vex looked at the screen showing his former homeworld under attack. Human ships swarmed around the planet like angry insects, but they weren't using the overwhelming firepower he expected. Instead, they seemed to be playing with the defenders. "Why don't you just destroy the planet?" he asked, his voice hollow with defeat. Torres looked surprised. "Destroy it. Commander, we're not monsters. We're liberators." "Liberators? Of course. Your people are suffering under the oppression of the hegemony leadership. We're here to free them from tyranny." On the screen, Vex watched human boarding parties capture hegemony ships. But something was wrong with the footage. The boarding parties included aliens, creatures that looked exactly like his own species, fighting alongside the humans against their former allies. "That's impossible," Vex whispered. "Those are hegemony soldiers fighting with you." "Were hegemony soldiers," Torres corrected, popping another piece of food into her mouth. "Now they are members of the Free Kepler Liberation Front. Amazing what people will do when you show them they have a choice." Admiral Volkov's voice came over the ship's communication system. "All units, this is Nemesis Actual. Phase 3 is complete. Begin Phase 4 operations." Torres activated her comm unit. "Admiral, what's our status on the conversion program?" "Ahead of schedule, Captain. We've processed about 60,000 former hegemony personnel through the re-education facilities. Most of them are eager to help their former comrades see the truth about human intentions." Vex felt his blood chill. "Re-education facilities?" "Oh, don't worry," Torres said cheerfully. "We're not monsters like your people were. We don't restructure entire species or turn people into slaves. We just show them videos of what life is like in the free colonies, teach them about human concepts, like individual rights and democratic government, and let them make their own choices. And if they choose to remain loyal to the hegemony?" Torres shrugged. "Then they remain loyal to the hegemony. In comfortable prison facilities with full medical care, educational opportunities, and regular visits from family members. We're not barbarians, Commander." On another screen, Vex watched human ships engaging a hegemony patrol near the Vega system. But this wasn't the same kind of battle he had witnessed at Earth. The human tactics had evolved. Instead of simply destroying enemy ships, the humans would disable them, board them, and somehow convince the crews to switch sides. Within hours, former hegemony vessels would be attacking their own allies, their crews enthusiastically broadcasting messages about human liberation and the freedom to choose their own destiny. "How?" Vex asked. "How do you turn our people against everything they believe in?" Torres looked genuinely puzzled. "Commander, have you ever actually talked to your people? I mean, really talked to them, not just given them orders?" "Of course, I have. No, I mean talk to them about their lives, their hopes, their families, what they dream about when they're not following hegemony orders." Vex was silent. "Because we have," Torres continued. "And you know what we found? Most of your people don't really like the hegemony very much. They follow orders because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. They fight because they've been told they're superior to other species. But when you show them there's another way to live." She gestured at the screens showing former hegemony worlds where human flags flew alongside local symbols. They choose freedom pretty quickly. On the bridge of the EDS Nemesis, Admiral Volkov was reviewing reports from across the former hegemony territory. The campaign was proceeding better than anyone had dared hope. In just 3 months, humanity had liberated 12 worlds and convinced over 300,000 former hegemony citizens to join their cause. "Admiral," reported Commander Jackson, "we're receiving surrender offers from 4 more systems. They want to negotiate terms for peaceful occupation." "What kind of terms?" The usual: guarantee of individual rights, democratic representation in local government, protection from hegemony retaliation, and full citizenship rights in the Terran Coalition after a one-year transition period. Volkov nodded. The terms were generous because they could afford to be generous. Every world that joined willingly was one less world they had to fight for, and every former hegemony citizen who chose freedom became a walking advertisement for human liberation. Any word from the Hegemony Council? They're still trying to organize a counterattack, but they're having problems. About half of their remaining fleet commanders are refusing orders. Apparently, they've been talking to prisoners we've released, and they don't like what they're hearing about hegemony plans for dealing with unreliable species. Volkov allowed herself a smile. The hegemony's greatest weakness wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was that they had ruled through fear for so long, they had forgotten that fear only works when people don't have alternatives. Status of the conversion facilities? Running at full capacity. We're processing about 10,000 former hegemony personnel per week. The success rate is holding steady at 93%. And the other 7%? Comfortable detention with full privileges. Most of them are asking to be transferred to neutral worlds where they can live peacefully. A few are still hoping for rescue, but even they admit they prefer human prisons to hegemony military service. The door to the bridge opened, and Dr. Sarah Kim entered. As the president's science advisor turned director of alien relations, she had become the architect of humanity's integration policies. Admiral, I have the latest psychological evaluation reports from the Kepler facilities. And? We're seeing some interesting patterns. Former hegemony soldiers adapt to human military culture surprisingly well. They seem to enjoy having a voice in tactical planning and the right to refuse orders they consider immoral. Former administrators love our bureaucratic efficiency systems. And former slaves, Dr. Kim smiled. Former slaves are our most enthusiastic recruits. What about their biological needs? Any problems with integration? Minor dietary adjustments, some environmental modifications for different atmospheric requirements, nothing we can't handle. The medical teams report that most species actually become healthier once they're removed from hegemony nutrition programs. Through the bridge windows, they could see a stream of ships heading toward Earth, former hegemony vessels now flying under human command, carrying refugees and new coalition members home to be processed and integrated into human society. Dr. Kim, Volkov asked, in your professional opinion, how long before the hegemony completely collapses? At current rates, 6 months, maybe less. Their entire power structure was based on the idea that resistance was futile and submission was the only choice. Once their people realized there were alternatives, the whole system started falling apart. On the detention deck, High Commander Vex watched the reports of his civilization's dissolution with growing despair. World after world was declaring independence from the hegemony and joining the human coalition. His own species, the proud militaristic race that had conquered half the galaxy, was eagerly embracing human concepts of individual freedom and democratic government. Captain, Torres found him staring out a porthole at the stars. Regrets, Commander? How long until you execute me? He asked quietly. Torres looked genuinely confused. Execute you? Commander, you're scheduled for release next week. Release? Well, after you complete the standard integration program, you'll have a choice of 3 neutral worlds where you can live peacefully, or you can apply for citizenship in the Terran Coalition. Up to you. Vex turned to stare at her. You're not going to kill me. Why would we kill you? You're not a threat anymore, and you might have valuable historical information about pre-hegemony civilizations. Besides, killing prisoners of war is against human law. But I conquered worlds. I enslaved entire species. And now you have a chance to spend the rest of your life helping to undo that damage, if you choose to. Torres headed for the door, then paused. Commander, can I ask you something? In all your years of conquest, did you ever once offer your enemies the chance to live freely after they surrendered? Vex was silent. That's the difference between us, Torres said quietly. We're not trying to build an empire. We're trying to build a future where everyone gets to choose their own path, as she left. Vex continued staring out at the stars, wondering if perhaps he had spent his entire life fighting for the wrong side. 6 months after the first human ships had left Earth, President Elena Martinez stood before the Galactic Assembly on New Geneva Station, looking out at delegates from over 400 worlds. Half of them had been slaves under the hegemony. The other half had been members of species so primitive the hegemony had never bothered to contact them. Now they all sat together as equals, voting on laws that would govern a new kind of galactic civilization. The motion to establish universal healthcare standards passes by a vote of 312 to 88, announced the Secretary General, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 eyes who had once been a hegemony administrator. The woo. Next item on our agenda is the proposal for mandatory education rights for all sapient beings. Martinez smiled as she watched the delegates debate. It had taken humanity exactly 187 days to completely dismantle an empire that had lasted 3,000 years. But they hadn't done it through superior firepower alone. They had done it by offering something the galaxy had never seen before, a government that actually served its people. In the back of the assembly hall, former High Commander Vex sat in the observer section taking notes. He had chosen to join the Terran Coalition after completing his re-education program, and now served as a historical advisor, helping to document the crimes of the old hegemony and ensure they were never repeated. "Remarkable," whispered the delegate sitting next to him, a small reptilian creature from one of the Outer Rim worlds. "6 months ago, I was hiding in caves to avoid hegemony slave raids. Now I'm helping to write laws that will protect my grandchildren." Vex nodded slowly. He was still adjusting to the idea that governments could exist to protect people rather than control them. Admiral Volkov entered the assembly hall during a recess, her black uniform drawing respectful nods from delegates throughout the room. The Black Fleet had become legendary across the galaxy, but not for the reasons she had expected. "Admiral," called out Martinez as Volkov approached, "how are the integration programs proceeding?" "Better than projected, Madam President. We've successfully transitioned 438 former hegemony worlds to coalition membership. Only 12 worlds have chosen to remain independent, and they're all maintaining peaceful relations with us. And the hegemony loyalists? Down to about 300 ships scattered across the Outer Rim. They're calling themselves the true hegemony now, but they're more of a refugee fleet than a military threat. Most of their personnel are requesting asylum on coalition worlds." Dr. Sarah Kim joined the conversation, carrying a tablet full of data. "The psychological integration studies are showing fascinating results. Former hegemony citizens are adapting to democratic systems faster than we anticipated. It turns out that when people are given real choices about their lives, they become very motivated to make those choices work." A young aide approached the group, carrying an urgent message pad. "Madam President, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's marked as urgent diplomatic traffic." Martinez took the pad and read quickly, her eyebrows rising. "Well, this is interesting. Admiral, it seems we have visitors." "What kind of visitors?" "A delegation from the Andromedan Collective. They want to discuss mutual cooperation and peaceful coexistence between galactic civilizations." Volkov's expression hardened. "Intelligence reports suggest the Andromedans have been watching our conflict with the hegemony. They probably want to negotiate before we turn our attention to their territory. Or," Dr. Kim said thoughtfully, "they've heard about our integration policies and want to learn from them. The reports say their own empire is facing internal stability problems." Martinez considered this. The Andromedan Collective controlled a significant portion of the neighboring galaxy, and their technology was reportedly even more advanced than the hegemonies had been. But they had also ruled through fear and oppression for even longer. "What's our military status, Admiral?" "The Black Fleet is at full strength, 800 ships now, with more launching every month. We've also got about 2,000 former hegemony vessels that have been refitted with our technology. And," Volkov smiled grimly, "we've got about 4 million former hegemony personnel who are very eager to help us liberate anyone else who might be suffering under similar oppression." 4 million? Turns out that once people get a taste of freedom, they become very enthusiastic about sharing it with others. As if summoned by their conversation, a group of delegates approached. Leading them was a tall, crystalline being who had once been a hegemony enforcer. Behind him walked representatives from dozens of species, all wearing the blue armbands that identified them as Coalition Integration Specialists. "Madam President," the crystalline being said in accented but clear English. "We have completed our review of the Andromedan situation. Our recommendation is immediate diplomatic contact, followed by offers of integration assistance if they prove receptive." "And if they're not receptive?" Martinez asked. Another delegate, this one a furry creature with 6 arms, stepped forward. "Then we help their people understand that there are alternatives to oppression, the same way the humans helped us." Dr. Kim looked at her tablet. "We're already receiving communications from Andromedan resistance groups. Word about the coalition is spreading faster than their government can suppress it." Martinez looked around at the assembled delegates. Former slaves, former oppressors, former enemies, all working together to build something better than what had come before. It was messy and complicated, and sometimes chaotic, but it was also something the galaxy had never seen. A government based on consent rather than conquest. "Admiral Volkov," she said finally, "prepare the diplomatic fleet, but make sure it includes plenty of Black Fleet vessels. Sometimes the best diplomacy comes from a position of visible strength." And if diplomacy fails, Martinez's smile was sharp and cold, the same expression she had worn when delivering her fake surrender speech 6 months earlier. "Then we remind the Andromedans of the lesson we taught the hegemony. Governments exist to serve their people, not the other way around. And if they won't serve their people willingly, we'll help their people find new governments that will," Volkov finished. As the assembly session resumed, Martinez took her place at the podium to address the delegates. Behind her, on screens visible throughout the hall, displayed the motto that had become the unofficial slogan of the Terran Coalition: "Earth remembers." "My fellow beings," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. "6 months ago, a powerful empire came to Earth and demanded that humanity kneel. They expected us to surrender our freedom, our dignity, and our right to determine our own destiny." The hall fell silent as delegates listened to words they had heard before, but never tired of hearing. Instead, we reminded them of something that tyrants always forget. Free beings will always fight for their freedom. And once they taste it, they will never willingly give it up. A cheer went up from the delegates, representing hundreds of species and thousands of worlds, all united by the simple idea that people should be allowed to choose their own governments. "Today we face new challenges from those who would return the galaxy to the old ways of fear and oppression. But we face them together as equals, as partners in the great work of building a civilization worthy of all its members." Outside the A station's windows, the Black Fleet maintained its patrol, sleek ships bearing the combined symbols of Earth and the Coalition moving in precise formations through space. They were no longer just humanity's defense force. They had become the guardians of freedom for an entire galaxy, and in the deepest space between galaxies, long-range sensors detected the first Andromedan scout ships, their commanders probably, expecting to find the same kind of primitive civilization that the hegemony had expected to conquer. They were about to learn the same lesson their predecessors had learned. Humanity and its allies didn't kneel to anyone. Instead, they had become the galaxy's way of teaching bullies that there was always someone bigger, smarter, and more determined waiting in the dark. The age of galactic tyranny was over. The age of galactic freedom had begun, and Earth, as always, remembered.